Good morning, everyone. So I am going to start in just 1 minute. I'm just going to set up my screen so that I can share and set the sound and everything. Let me just grab that. Okay. I need to move this. Here we go. Okay. All right. So my name is Nadia Castagna. I've been teaching music to students with disabilities for over 8 years. I started out with an associate's in psychology, and then I went on to getting my bachelor's in expressive arts therapies at Lesley. And then I found the music education program, which was formerly at Boston Conservatory, but is now at Berklee. And I got my master's in music education with an autism concentration. And currently I am almost done. I have like another class to go, but I'm almost done with my post-grad certificate in applied behavior analysis, which will allow me to sit for the board exam and become a BCBA, or board certified behavior analyst. I want to bridge those two communities. And I'll talk about it a little bit in this presentation because I do work at a school that is a school that uses applied behavior analysis. I work at the New England Center for Children in Southborough, Massachusetts, which is the facility that uses ABA. And I also work at the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education in Boston. So, nope, there we go. Give me one more second. I just want to present this in a different way so I can see. Here we go. Okay. All right, one more second. I apologize. Thank you for being so patient. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to do is kind of talk about the structure of classes that I typically run. We always start with an opening song and end with a closing song. I find that it's really helpful for transition. A lot of the students that I work with are at the school because they engage in high rates of aggression and self-injury. They have different types of autism or different ranges of autism, I should say, and a few other developmental disabilities that also attend this school. Students sometimes have a hard time going from their classroom to the music room and then back again. It causes some anxiety. So having opening songs and closing songs kind of like sections out that portion of time and makes it maybe just a little bit easier to transition from space to space. The next thing, let me change the next slide. So my classes are usually 30 to 45 minutes. That's a really good range of time. I know some places or some schools require 1 hour. However, there's a lot of different shift changes that need to happen every hour at my school. So we do 30 to 45 minute classes. So it gives all of the teams time to get back up to their classes and switch teachers. I guess it's lucky in some ways and maybe not as lucky in other ways. But the school that I work at has a very vast amount of teachers and BCBAs. The ratio is roughly 1 teacher for every 2 students, roughly. So I have a lot of support staff when they come down to the specials classrooms. So sometimes trying to explain that this is not your typical average setting where there's maybe like a couple of paras. This particular school has a lot of teachers and BCBAs, and also something that we call level 2 teachers, which are individuals that are in the process of getting their master's in education. So I separate activities every 5 to 8 minutes, and we alternate between sitting and standing, especially for younger students. This works out really great. Some kids really can't sit for long periods of time, so it's great to get them up and moving, especially if the school is, seated mostly. Sometimes music class or recess or gym might be the only times that they get movement. It's important to think about the students individually. My school goes up to 22 years of age, and I have gotten pushback in the past of, oh, the songs that you sing are baby songs. But my argument ends up being that, okay, well, if this was math and you were asking me to do division or multiplication, I would have to learn how to count first. So a foundational song has very basic chord changes or very basic echo patterns, and the material can be silly sometimes. I learned a song about going to the grocery and eating snacks. If you haven't seen it, it's on, I believe, Facebook or TikTok. It's called Tubby Nugget. It's a really cute snacks song, and I use it as a movement song, and we pretend that we're going to a grocery store. But anyway, some of these songs, it may seem silly. However, these are like your foundational songs, like your counting songs. It's got a basic structure, it's got basic chord changes, and it's really easy to remember. So these are songs that you want to start with instead of like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony or dubstep. So this is the reason why I choose the material that I choose. And I don't really consider them quote unquote baby songs. It's important to think about the cognitive participation of your classes and what support students might need, what their abilities are, and how much how many staff members are with the student, what kind of help do you get? And it's also really important to have a growth mindset. So a little bit of what I use is structured informal guidance, which is really typical in the Gordon music learning theory. I was trained by Krista Yadro, and she learned through the Gordon music learning theory. It was developed by Edwin Gordon, and it kind of relates music learning to language learning. So exposure to like different modalities or different time signatures, just having students feel as much different kinds of music as they possibly can. And the stages of development, which I will talk about in just a moment, are really important in this particular learning theory. So like I was talking about, learning music is similar to learning a language, where we both start out with listening. Then, we go on to speaking or performing. Then it would go on to thinking and conversing, which can be equivalent to audiating and improvising. Then reading and writing are always the last two. They require more fine motor movements and different cognitive abilities. So they're saved for last for older students. All right. Excuse me. There we go. So structured informal guidance kind of looks like that the teacher kind of has like an outline of what the class is going to look like, but not requiring specific responses or expectations, and trying to make it appropriate for audiation in every age. So it's kind of like teaching with the foundation and kind of working with the student to build up from there. So the stages kind of look like this. We would start out with acculturation. So this incorporates absorption, random responses, and then purposeful responses. A lot of students, especially in classes that have disabilities, Absorption, sometimes you'll see students kind of sitting in class and maybe just are taking in everything that's going on, maybe just watching you the whole time, maybe not responding. However, maybe they go back to their classroom and now they're kind of processing what they're learning. We have a lot of word from parents that, oh, my kid doesn't do this in class, but they will do it when they get home. So like we might not sing the hello song or wave hi when we're in class, but when the child is home, then they will do that and they'll model it. So sometimes students just need to be in that absorption phase, and it doesn't have to be for very young students. This method kind of carries students from like birth until their adulthood. However, acculturation, absorption, all of these things can happen for older students as well, especially if we didn't have music education as children. Schools like private schools for autism sometimes don't always have the resources to have arts educators, and often will have teachers that maybe are musicians or are artists, but weren't trained in education, kind of take over those roles. However, it makes a difference to have an educator in the arts classroom, regardless. After acculturation, I'll go on to imitation. So this is when students are kind of like shedding ecocentricity, kind of, oh, I see that what I'm doing isn't quite matching what the teacher is doing. And kind of like breaking through this code of like, oh, this is what it should sound like. These are the movements that need to be made. And assimilation, just going to introspection and coordination, getting everything to where typically you would be if you've practiced for quite a bit of time, being able to start improvising, being able to start error correction on their own, things of that nature. So when considering curriculum, just like earlier, age appropriateness and cognitive appropriateness are things to consider. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, especially if a class has a very wide range of abilities. I've had classes that I have students that need 100% support physically all the time, in classes with students that are completely 100% independent. So we have very different physical needs, very different cognitive needs, and trying to accommodate the curriculum for both of the students might be a challenge, but it's worth sitting down and considering. Something that would be helpful is more support staff, I guess, ideally in a ideal world. And if you don't have enough support staff, what supports could you put in class to help students? And modifications and adaptations are your best friend, but most of all, differentiate your expectations and don't underestimate your students. I feel like all of us kind of fall into this occasionally, where students kind of take us by surprise. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, I really held back. I'm not going to hold back anymore. So every student is unique. What works for one student obviously is not going to work for everybody. And equity versus equality is more important. It's more important that everybody is getting what they need as opposed to everybody getting the same blanket support. And even though it's easier said than done, simultaneous teaching and observation can really be helpful, especially when needing to assess a student and see what kind of prompting or tiered questioning might be needed to help them access the lesson. Having a growth mindset is basically just not underestimating your students, looking at what they can do as opposed to what they can't do. It seems like very little, but it really makes a difference. It's kind of having a positive mentality. Where can we go from here? What's the next step? What can they do? Moving forward, how can we scaffold this to make sure that they're building upon what they have and not staying stagnant for too long? And just believing that every student can make an improvement, even if it's small. I've had students that it's taken them 5 years to match pitch, but they did it. Eventually they did it. It's just not giving up and just playing a good waiting game. I also, especially to the support staff, whoever comes into my music room, I like to just emphasize that I'm really looking for students to participate, and I don't want perfection. It would be nice, but it's not realistic. They don't have to play the rhythm exactly perfectly in order for them to show that they're learning and they're trying. Flexibility, communication, patience, and try everything. I always recommend, like, even if students like, oh, I don't think my students would like this. Well, let's just try. Let's see how it goes. I've had students that teachers didn't want to give them instruments because they were worried that the instruments would get broken. And I've literally had to say, like, no, I accept full responsibility if the instrument gets broken. Let's just have them try it. Unless it's like a super safety hazard, if they're just going to throw the instrument and it breaks, it is what it is. However, if they're going to like eat a mallet, that wouldn't be okay. That would be a safety concern that I would really be like, all right, maybe something different. But if it's just, I'm worried they might be too rough with the instrument and it's going to break, I still want them to try it. I still want them to try it, because you can always work on how to have softer technique. You can have them practice with pillows underneath the drums, or stuff like a towel or a blanket up inside the drum, things like that to kind of like reinforce it. So just in case there is a really hard hitter in the class, you have time to work with them before the drum gives out. I only say this because I have a lot of students that we are working on gentle touch with instruments. And I do have students that throw instruments, and I do have students that get very excited and really want to really wail on a drum. And, we work on like, hey, gentle, like, we don't want to break it. However, does it happen? Absolutely. I have a xylophone for a student that I have who throws instruments that I have put together with duct tape, because he's thrown it a couple times, and that's his instrument when it's time to use it. That's what he gets. And students that have a very rough touch with the xylophones as well will also have that instrument. So now I have instruments to accommodate. I'm not saying break an instrument on purpose, but I'm now saying that now I have instruments to accommodate everybody. But that doesn't necessarily mean break an instrument just so you can have accommodations. There are other ways to accommodate. Thinking on the fly is something that is not easy and can be really frustrating sometimes. However, being flexible with behaviors in the classroom, whether it's expected or unexpected, depending on the behavior, it can be a challenge. But it's kind of like, how do I roll with the punches here? Sometimes literally. And, what could be done the next time to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Or what happened that before this, that the student exhibited this? Like, could I have offered a different instrument? Maybe I should take the student aside and talk to them, or maybe they're going to work with their support staff and they can join when they're ready. Sometimes it's just, hey, this isn't working in the lesson that I planned. We're going to do this now because I think this will work better. It's gotten me a few years to get to this point, but it's okay to make decisions on the spot. Sometimes I'll be in a class and I go to switch to an activity, and then even out loud, I'll say, no, I don't want to do that. I actually want to do this. So, okay, guys, this is actually what we're going to do. And it kind of makes it real, like you're working with them. And you can also explain, like, I'm just thinking about our abilities and what's going to work best for us to make sure that we're successful in a lesson, rather than, yeah, I don't think the students are going to be able to do this, so we're going to do this. There's just like a slight difference in wording, and that slight difference really makes a big difference. So some supports for class are communication. It's really important to communicate with whoever is in the network. If you're at a private studio and you talk to parents and caregivers, or even if you're in a public school and you talk to parents and caregivers, keeping them in the loop is amazing. I've had schools that only gave grades for conduct. I have worked at schools that don't give grades for specials at all. I've had schools that want me to speak directly to parents, and also schools that don't want me to speak directly to parents. So it's important to know who to communicate and when to communicate. Students can have all sorts of people in their lives. You can communicate directly to the students. If needed, you can directly communicate with parents and caregivers, their specialists, maybe. Occupational therapy, speech and language, physical therapist, their BCBA, whoever is in their network. You could speak to their homeroom teachers or their direct care teachers, and you could also speak to your administration to make sure that you're being advocated for. Some interdisciplinary collaboration that I've done is with OT, occupational therapy. Occupational therapists are who I work the closest with. They are the most relevant to what I do. They work with fine motor movements, positioning, bimanual coordination, sensory concerns, hand-eye coordination, etc. They work with so much that is super relevant to the mechanics of how we produce sound physically on instruments. And even working with the speech and language office, how we're receiving information and how we're expressing information is essential to music education. So OT and speech and language I work with them the most. I have a school full of BCBAs and educators. Some of them are both, some of them are one or the other. So I talk to the BCBAs if we're really having, behavioral plans, or if we need to come up with a behavior plan for class, like a reinforcement schedule, or how demands are presented to a specific student. I actually have a student that I have to speak indirectly to that particular student in order for them to not throw the instrument or lose track in class. This particular student has had some interesting behaviors when it came to me directly asking him to give back an instrument, to put something away. Any direct demand or question might trigger an instrument to be thrown. So I've had to ask questions and make statements such as, if you still have your drum out, can you please put it away? Like, he might be the only one with his drum out, or I might save him and one other student with their drums before asking them to put it away. And I just give blanket statements like, oh, if you still have your mallets, please put them on my desk. If you have mallets in your hands, I want you to play C and G, going back and forth, just like this. So it kind of depends on every student's behavior. Everything is different. So there's no blanket idea or statement for just one student. They're all different. I'm sure you guys have experienced this as well. Educators that are like general education are great for reading, decoding, letter identification, error correction, which is also BCBAs can help with that. And error correction can just be as simple as, hey, move your finger back one string, or move your finger back one fret, or it's just super simple. Like, instead of jumping on this foot, jump on this foot. But, sometimes you got to get creative with how error correction is presented. And I've also coordinated with vision specialists, as I do have some students that are visually impaired. So they can give some really good insight on extra supports to put with music or instruments, anything like that. I use a schedule for some of my classes, and other classes I don't. I have a few classes that I used to write the schedule on a whiteboard. However, I had a lot of students that some of their behaviors included erasing things from the whiteboard. So I stopped writing on the whiteboard because it was triggering a behavior that got them off track for class. So I decided not to do that. And I just used my Promethean board to post a schedule or to just kind of give a general outline of class. I do have a Promethean board, which is similar to a smart board. It's just basically like a giant TV that's on the wall, like it's huge. And it's a touchscreen TV. Kids really like it because it's kind of like a big iPad. It's not compatible with Apple products. If you wanted to like screen mirror on an iPad, it would do that, but you'd have to use the iPad instead of touching the screen. But it does come with an app called Walkband, WALKBAND, Walkband. And it's similar to GarageBand. So so there's that for Prometheans. But they're a really intuitive device. They also have different settings that you could use on the whiteboard setting that opens up sheet music so that you can like write on staff music. Kind of like if you've ever seen like basically in, I don't know, like second grade when you were learning how to write and they gave you like the blank lines with all the dots in it. That's kind of what they have on the Promethean board, as well as for sheet music. We put general, like, hello song, then we have the next warm-up song, elevators. We also use visuals to show what's expected of each song. And then what you don't have to list are things that you do during that particular song. So as an example, I dissected a little bit the song that we have, Elevators. So the song that my very best friend and also coworker, Miles Wilcox, created this song called Elevators, and he presented it in one of our early childhood classes. And it's, elevator, please won't you take me up, 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 up. Elevator, please won't you take me down, 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 down. Up, 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 up. Down, 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 down. So we have the students first like put their body into the elevator. So we also tell parents that they don't have to crouch down and jump up as many times as we ask the kids to do it. Even though we would like them to, we do understand that some parents might have some troubles just in case they have any like we have grandparents that join this class as well that are like, yeah, crouching and jumping up are just not something that I can do, but I can bend at the waist and touch my toes. Like, okay, that's fine, do that. Then we might do something called like a jazzy elevator and sing it in like a jazzy key. And then maybe like a spooky elevator and sing it in a minor key. So we're kind of like teaching about different keys without actually teaching it. And sometimes students will say like, ooh, this sounds like sad, or this sounds spooky, or however they're interpreting it. And then we kind of like talk about it then, but it's almost like student led, and the students kind of bring up things on their own. You could also do it faster, slower, kid choice. Sometimes we have kids that want to turn every single time. So it might be a really great idea at the end, like, after you've chosen a few students, maybe there's one particular student that continuously raises their hand over and over again. And, you might say, okay, it's kid choice now, so you can decide what you want to do. So, you could stick your hand in the elevator. You can stick your foot in the elevator. You could stick your nose in the elevator, whatever you want to do. This kind of accommodates everybody. Choice is sometimes difficult for students. Choice making is even difficult for me sometimes. Let's be honest, choice making is difficult for all of us all the time. Some people say the hardest choices are to choose what you're eating for dinner. which is so true. However, choices that you're making in the classroom, we make choices every single day, all the time, especially when we have different classes, especially when you're thinking, is this class going to be able to do this? I know the other kindergarten class was able to do this, but is this kindergarten class going to be able to handle it? You know, we have some younger students, or we have some older students, or, you know, maybe we use one material of one class and not for the other class. Helping students make choices is even more important. Sometimes when you're asking questions, students need choices because they might not have everything present in their memory unless they're prompted. So something that you could do to help prompt students is use a choice board. This is an example of a choice board that I worked with the speech department to make. I have a music iPad in the classroom that has the app Touch Chat, and so it's a communication device for students. I also made it available that if any team or classroom or particular teacher wants to ask for these choice boards to be added to their students' devices, that they could work with their speech and language pathologist in order to put the choice boards onto Touch Chat for them, so they could have it on their own instead of using their device. Here's another, or the next part of the choice board. So I included things for beat. I included things for rhythm that has colors behind it, which I have since changed, and I will later explain why. I have hand signs, big beat, little beat, rhythm, instruments, different, you know, like different instruments, including rhythm sticks, egg shakers, things that we use in class, numbers, A, B, and C section. I like it, I don't like it. More, all done, colors, letters. And it's really important for choices in responding when you're saying, like, you know, how did the musician play the ipu? Ipu is a traditional instrument from Hawaii, and they play it with their hands. So you could give, like, did they play it with their hands or did they play it with their feet? Sometimes you can kind of ask students, they can tell you, like, yeah, I want a choice. Or some students might even ask what's available. We had a student in our early childhood class that said, we were asking, what part of your, because we have a song called Sticky Bubblegum, and it's like, you know, what part of the body should we get our sticky bubblegum hand stuck to? And she was like, I don't know, what's available. So, so, you know, students have different ways of responding and sometimes need prompts for choices. There you go. So I'm going to have a few of these sections where I'm going to give 20 seconds. 20 seconds doesn't seem like a lot, but I want to make sure that I get through all the material. So you'll have 20 seconds to reflect in different points of this because I've been talking forever. And so I want you to think of a student in your class that may need extra support and you're not sure what to do, or maybe you've had this student for a few years and some novel thing started happening, or I don't know, even if you can't think of a student, just pretend like you have a student maybe that has hard time focusing, or has a hard time hitting the drum with both hands alternating. So these are just some examples that maybe you could work with. So are there any supports that you can add to your class that would help this particular student, or who could you collaborate with to best support that student? So I'm going to count to 20. I'll give you a 5-second warning and then we'll move on. And starting now. Five seconds. All right, that was 20 seconds. It might, it's okay if you're still thinking about it, no worries. You can always take this prompt with you and think about it later. There's a few more of these too, so you can always come back to this thought. So singing and vocalizing in class. A lot of what I do, as well as my colleague, Miles, we use tonal patterns, which can be found in the Gordon Music Learning Theory. So some of the tonal patterns are do, mi, sol, re, ti, sol, sol, fa, re. So just different types of tonal patterns. You can do it in major, you can do it in minor, you can do it in any one of the modes, however you'd like to do that. Miles and I work closely right now with major and minor, and slowly introduce other types, maybe like whole tone, or I don't know, like melodic minor or things like that. So tonal patterns, nonverbal students can also participate in these tonal patterns. I've had students participate in making the hand signs. I've had students participate in raising their hands up and down. Also, in music education, especially what we do for introducing tonal patterns is tell teachers or support parents, regular parents, but supporting their kids in class, that any response is a response, even if that seems very vague. Sometimes, so I teach an infant class as well, infant and young toddler. And in this, I tell the parents that, hey, it's totally okay if we're not speaking yet, or if we're just in a babbling phase. I'm not expecting us to get it. I introduce the tonal patterns on a neutral syllable, like the syllable ba, like ba, 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 ba. You could even use la, ma with an M, p, pa, depending on the abilities. Ba and ma are the most accessible for beginning learners, beginning vocalizing students. So with my infant class, sometimes I'll say, any response is a response, and then we'll do the first tonal pattern, and all of a sudden one of the babies is like, huh! And I just look over and I'm like, you know what? That was the perfect example of any response is a response. This baby is vocalizing and in the appropriate spot. It also helps that if they're young enough, you can use puppets. Or if your school/classroom teachers are okay with you using puppets for older classes, you can totally do that. I've had some pushback with adult classes, or I say adult, like over 18, like 18 to 22, even older, like sometimes it can get kind of iffy. I know that puppets really are great. We know how awesome puppets are, and we know how awesome they can be for even adult students. However, not everybody is totally into that. So even if you are using puppets, sometimes students will respond to them. You'll see later, I have some examples of puppets, but I like the ones that can actually open and close their mouths. It's really helpful. And it shows kind of like what's expected of students. You can even point your pointer finger right at your mouth and demonstrate you're moving your pointer finger away from your mouth as you're saying the word ba or something. So it kind of physically shows what the words are doing. They're coming out of your mouth. I've had a lot of success with that. Yes. Awesome. I was just seeing that there was a chat. So yes, alternate hands, maybe one hand on the drum and one hand on. Yes, that's also a great one, Fabiana. Thank you. So call and response, we all understand. It's a really great tool, especially if students are still starting out. It's great to kind of give them the model so that they can respond. Once you have that call and response, then you can start working on like same and different to kind of help separate students and get them ready for improvisation if they're ready for it. So this is another one of the things that my colleague and I do. We do brown bear, brown bear. A lot of the students know this. So sometimes it's just putting tonal pattern, or not tonal patterns. A melody to the storybook, and then they can respond. So these are just two parts of the book. You can also do songs that are fill in the blank songs. So the song that I have listed on the page is called Little Mouse. We've also done it Little Ghost. Either way is okay. You can make it anything you'd like to be honest. It won't always rhyme unless you're using specific ones that rhyme, but this is kind of what it sounds like. Sometimes late at night, I hear a sound. It's a little mouse creeping round the house. Sometimes late at night, I hear a sound. It's a little mouse creeping round the house. So you can always leave off the end, like night, sound, mouse, house, and have the students fill it in, and like maybe have them slowly fill it in over time. So that's another way you could get them to vocalize or sing. You can also have students use their devices, or if you have a device that's pre-programmed with these words, or you can laminate the words and have them hold it up to kind of help them for participation so that they can do it too. So here are some of the rhythm visuals that we're using now. I like to use food for visuals. I find that it's really relatable to speech, and students really get into it. So the ones that I call this apple pie rhythm. So the first rhythm would be pie, pie, apple pie. And I do it one by one with students. I'll say like, oh, what is this first video or this first picture? It's a pie. Yes. And what's the second picture? It's a pie. Yeah. And what's the third picture? It's an apple. Yep, sure is. And I also get them to emphasize apple. So we can kind of start working in that there's syllables. It's not just apple. And then the last one I go, yes, it's pie. So then I'll just start pulling these up on the Promethean or on a projector, whatever we have. And you could do apple pie, or for lack of better words, the We Will Rock You rhythm. Apple, apple, apple pie. But then you can throw in some like random things like, ooh, does anybody know what's on the screen now? Ooh, it's cinnamon. How could we do this? Apple pie, cinnamon pie. And kids know what things are sometimes, they'll know, or they'll take guesses. They get really excited. You can even, once they get a little bit more advanced as well, you can even do watermelon and just start talking about syllables. When we play watermelon, let's count how many times we will click our sticks or clap our hands for watermelon. So some future considerations that I think about is attending, and attending is just engagement. Now, I was saying that this is the type of rhythm symbol that I used to use. I don't use the colors anymore, or I typically don't. I really just use the note shape because honestly, I wasn't sure what the students were attending to. I wasn't sure if they were attending to the color, the background of the note, the stem of the note, the head, or like the shapes, the rectangle versus the square. I wasn't sure. So I really had to rethink the way that I was presenting rhythm to see how this would really work if students really needed extra support. And was this really a good support? Was this causing more issues than it was helping? I even had some advice from colleagues that are like, yeah, just get rid of the colors, just use the actual note. Even colleagues, so I got advice from colleagues that weren't musicians, and also colleagues from advice that are musicians. So the musicians and the music educators said, take the heads away and just use the stems so that you can work on the single stem for quarter notes, and then the beamed stem for eighth notes. I also had colleagues that are like, nope, just present the note and teach it how it is, so that they get used to seeing the full note. I mean, I've tried many different things. And to be honest, the food really works the best. So I'm going to give another 20 seconds for reflection. So I think of support materials that you've made for your classes. Are there any supports that some students may not have connected with? If so, could you accommodate streamlining the materials for better attending? I'm going to give 20 seconds. Do not feel obligated to write in the chat. This time I will actually check the chat just in case, but this is not a requirement to use the chat. And 20 seconds starting now. Five seconds. All right. That was 20 seconds. So what I wanted to do with this presentation today is, I know I'm giving a lot of material. However, I wanted to at least present a decent amount of tools that I use and the way that I look at teaching general music for students with disabilities. I usually work with students that have very high support needs or quote unquote severe autism. Again, they have self-injurious behavior and aggression. Most of the students I work with have those topographies of behaviors. However, I do work with a good population of students that do not exhibit those behaviors and have less support needs. However, I want all of my students, no matter their abilities, to be able to participate in a typical music education, what you would find if you were looking at the state frameworks. So I do teach music concepts that are not just keeping the beats and tonal patterns. So an example of what I do teach is form. So I use the song Humoresque, and again, shout out to my colleague, Miles. He kind of used Humoresque in a way that we did it in a scarf dance. And I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really good for form. And I adapted it for movement. And I did this during the pandemic, which is why there's a lot of visuals on how I wanted kids to move. But it actually worked out when we did it again in person. So during the A section, I was hoping that we would pat our legs, or you can even tell them to use spider fingers. That's what I tell them to use, which is just bouncing their hands on their fingertips. Some of the people that I've had as professors have said that patting your legs with open hands is very concrete, and it kind of is almost like finalization, whereas bouncing your fingers up and down, there's like it's constant motion, as opposed to like starting and stopping, which is harder to keep going. For the B section, I was asking them to tap their shoulders. And for the C section, I was asking them to sway back and forth. So you could always leave off the end in different ways, depending on what your students need. So here's one example of a slight modification. I just took out the last letter so that the students had to guess it, but I also left the prompt that they had to tap their shoulders. However, I had a class that was even more advanced that I could take away tapping your shoulders so that they had to listen and decide, where have I heard this before? And if I do figure out where I've heard it before, what did I do during that section? So there's just different ways to do it. If students are very high support needs, you can make one page for each section so that they really just have something basic to focus on. And even here in my example, I have a pink background. I have the words A section in white letters in a red square. And I have a picture of, or a clip art picture of somebody patting their legs. Even this might be a lot. I might even just, tone it down to just the picture of them patting their legs. Another thing that I do teach is percussion and drumming from around the world. And I have a side note at the bottom that says collaboration required. Some of the places that we're learning about for drumming, I coordinate with people that I work with that have a heritage in that particular country or culture. And I work with them, I collaborate, we talk about instruments and dances. They sometimes send me videos of themselves performing, and I make sure that what I am presenting is accurate and authentic. Full disclosure, I am a white female that's cisgendered as well. And I want to make sure that I'm not coming off as just the white chick that's teaching about different cultures. So I always wanted to make sure that if I was teaching about drumming from Senegal, which I was really interested in, and I wanted my students to have something different than just 4/4 time signature, or, hey, we're going to keep the beat and drum to some basic song or from Taylor Swift. Not that these things aren't great, but I wanted to give them something different, something that they didn't see. And also I started this in the pandemic. So we were quote unquote like vicariously traveling through our lessons to different places, because obviously traveling wasn't a thing. But I coordinated with the director of the nursing department at the time, who was from Senegal. And she had just recently had her mother there that cooked traditional Senegalese food. So I spoke with her and her mom to kind of figure out like, what is music like in your culture? What instruments are important? And we came across something called Chebujen rhythm. And Chebujen rhythm is the national dish of Senegal, but it's also a rhythm. And they named the rhythm after the dish. So it's just things that make it authentic, so that and trying to figure out then, because it's important also to run your modifications past these people as well, just to make sure that it's culturally appropriate. But, if I can't play it exactly like the person, or I'm teaching it for somebody that has higher support needs, is this also acceptable? Can we also teach it this way? My coworker, Miles, is part Hawaiian from, I believe his mother's side is from Hawaii. And he turned me on to looking at this particular drum called the ipu. And ipu is a gourd that is dried out for a decent amount of time. It takes about 9 months to grow, 3 to 6 months to dry out. And then you cut the top off, scoop out the insides, and now you have an ipu. Surprisingly, they are very expensive. There are 2 different kinds. One is called ipu heke, which is the larger ones that have a rounded top and a rounded bottom. So it's 2 put together. The one that's on the screen right now, the one that just has the top cut off, is regular ipu that is used in more modern music or dancing. I actually, with Miles's help, I found this place called the Wellburn Gourd Farm, that I was able to order gourds and create my own ipu. I have found that ipu is one of the most accessible instruments to have in the music classroom. You hold it around the neck and you drum with the heel of your hand on the bottom, where I guess like the belly button or the stem would be, or the end of the stem would be. My husband and I got them as regular gourds that were all dried out. We cut the tops off, beveled the insides, scooped out all the insides because it is a gourd. So there were seeds on the inside. And on the very, very right, this is my first gourd that broke. One of my students, not important, but it broke regardless. So this is kind of like the inside. The inside is like if you opened up a pumpkin and let it dry out. It kind of feels like beehive material. And that's kind of what scoops out, and what it looks like cardboard. So when you play it, sometimes the extra pieces will fall out, but it has a really beautiful sound. Every one of my students in my school for students with high support needs was able to access this instrument and play it the exact way that it should be played. So I do not regret my decision to purchase these. And we regularly do units on the ipu. And hopefully my coworker and I are finding another musician that'll help us get a few more rhythms. Here we go. So ipu, this is kind of like how I presented it. These are the rhythm sounds, u and te. So u is your heel hitting the palm heel of your hand. Te is kind of like a slapping motion. So here's a common rhythm. So just things that are as authentic to the culture. Modifying and adapting, basically adding and subtracting material for students that need the extra support or students that need the extra challenge. It is really, really important to baseline the activity and baseline the student before you start making modifications and adaptations. You don't want to make this too difficult or too easy. So it's always great to have a baseline. Winding it back, so basically making a foundational activity and having ways to build it up and ways to wind it back. And just being able to figure out, if needed, where the error correction could come in. So here's an example of another one bites the dust that we did on xylophones. For the xylophones, I know it might be blasphemous, but I put colored stickers on the xylophone keys, and I even put them on top of my drum heads in order for students to see what I'm talking about playing on the edge or playing in the middle. So I use red and green stickers on the drums. They are visible to students with visual impairment, even stickers that are fluorescent colored. And for, you'll see a little bit later when I start presenting on, because I do group piano lessons for general music, the way that I've set up at the piano is how I set up the xylophone with the colors of the rainbow. And so students have an extra foundation or an extra anchor point in case it's hard to read the letters or in case they don't have letter identification. So a modification would be, maybe for another one bites the dust, we'd have E, 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 rest, E, 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 rest. Maybe if students need it, you could have rest 2, 3, 4, E, G, A. Maybe that's the only part that you work on. And then you build it up from there. By building it up, you could have them always play E, G, A, or you can have them play the first part, E, 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 rest, E, G, A, rest, E, 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 rest, E, G, A. So that's a really good way to get them involved. Sometimes I have students that are ready for the entire melody. So bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum. And then I have students that really need just the E's over and over again. And I have them do that. I work with their support staff to coordinate, and that's what they play. And sometimes we even take away keys to make them more supported in class. So for instance, if we're only using E, G, and A, I'll have them remove all of the other keys so that only the E's, the G's, and the A's are on the instrument. This allows students to focus more on the letters that need to be hit. Sometimes having all of the colors or all of the letters all together is way too much. So just kind of toning it back is a lot easier. And also it helps with accuracy to space out the keys a little bit more. So that we're not hitting in between the keys. So here's another reflection point. Again, you do not have to write in the chat. You can if you want, I'll check it, but this is not a requirement. This is just your own reflection, so you don't have to listen to me for 3 hours straight. So think of your current lesson or your recent material that you taught, and how could you modify or adapt the material to reach a student that has very high support needs in class. All right, 20 seconds starting now. Five seconds. All right, so those are 20 seconds. I'm just moving on to just different props and instruments that I use. So some of the, I find props extremely useful. I also find that having instruments and materials that are durable really matter. either that or you're just going to be buying instruments all the time. And I know that music classes don't typically get a lot of budget or any budget at all. I've been at schools that have an unlimited budget, and I've had schools that have absolutely no budget or even negative budget. I've had schools where I've had to buy all my own instruments and all of my own products. And I've had schools that provided it for me. For each school, I do write my own curriculum. I might not write all of my songs. I mean, who does? But I at least write 40 to 50% of my own songs. And then, as we all do, we look for poems, songs, activities from different places. It's okay to look at other materials that you find. It's okay to look at other websites. Pay Teachers is a great resource. It's also great to take the resources that you find and make them your own so that it is specific to the populations of students that you have. So some of the things that I use are small dinosaur toys. Some of these are for specific songs, but like the song "We Are the Dinosaurs," that's a Laurie Berkner song. Students imitate with objects before they imitate with their bodies. Like if you think about it, like a baby might play with a toy and move it in a specific way before they're even walking, because they're imitating what's happening just with the toy, because that's what they can move. I use pom-poms to throw in the parachute. And I mean, throwing things in the parachute is like the best day in the world for kids. They love it. Even adult students love it. Again, I would check with age appropriateness for that. Sometimes teachers are like, yeah, why not? Sometimes teachers have very strong opinions. I also use on Amazon, you can find these things called crush proof balls or like ball pit balls, but they also come in stars and hearts. So I have a song called Shooting Star that we throw stars in the middle of the parachute, and they are crush proof, which means you can have like 300, 400 pounds stand on top of it and it will not pop. However, if a student bites it with one of their canine teeth or eye teeth and bites into it and pulls, it will pop. But not every class is going to have that. So it's good to have crush-proof instruments, especially if students really like the sensory aspects and like to squeeze things. We use puppets from the Puppet Company. They kind of look a little weird at first, but the kids really love them. Again, their mouths open and close to kind of demonstrate, we need to open our mouth to sing. My friend made up a song, Miles, made up a song called Larry the Llama. So we bought some llamas, that just small plush llamas that you can get on Amazon. By the way, all of these items are from Amazon, or even West Music. All of the items on this page, at least, are from Amazon. However, the stretchy band is from, I think, Bear Paw Creek. Anyway, the llamas you can get on Amazon. The sensory slugs are really fun. I believe this tune has been used for a lot of different songs, but we use it for the slug song. And we use these sensory slugs because the kids really love them. And I've seen them used as fidgets for kids at my schools. So I thought, why not use them in the music room? So we have a slug song that's, now my slug is up and now my slug is down. Now my slug is dancing all around the town. Dancing on my shoulder, dancing on my head, dancing on my knee, then tuck it into bed. And it's a good like call and response song too. And the kids really like the slugs. Let's see. The other two things other couple of things are movement scarves, which are great for dancing and doing different things. The kids love them, of all ages. You can even work on blowing out. That's also a really hard thing for students to do. Using a scarf might be very helpful. A stretchy band is kind of like a giant elastic band that you can use in a big group setting. This big group setting kind of, if you're holding on to the stretchy band, then it's like you have a whole bunch of joint attention. Everyone's looking at everybody else. They're playing with the band. It's sensory. It's accessible for everybody. You can hold the cloth, not just the rubber band. There's a lot. Also, I've found that the thing underneath it is called an octaband. And this is great, I have found, if you are doing an activity where you have to walk in a circle, because since this is set up similarly to an octopus, where there's a circle in the center and then like little tentacles coming off of it that you can hold. You could say like, oh, it looks like we need to spread out our circle. Our circle is dropping to the ground. We need to keep it up. So it kind of gives like a visual representation of what needs to happen. And here it is. How does ABA fit in? And I feel like a lot of the answers that people might originally think might be, it doesn't, but it does, but it really does. And specifically, it fits in with evidence-based learning. This is just a definition that I took. I put the quotation, or not quotation, the citation at the bottom. But the definition that I had is evidence-based practice of applied behavior analysis is a decision-making process that integrates the best available evidence with clinical expertise and client values and context. So aspects of evidence-based learning, which is part of ABA, which is basically all of ABA, is errorless learning. And we do that as musicians. We use things like the pentatonic scale to teach improvising. We use most to least prompting, just ways for students to be set up for success so that they're not encountering errors. Reinforcement of materials or movement, providing reinforcement like, hey, I really like the way that you move. That was a really creative idea. That's reinforcement. Shaping of stimuli and behavior. So shaping of stimuli, I'll go over when we get a little bit closer to piano group, but that's kind of like providing visuals or some kind of material that works as a support. And you can shape it by having it there present and then slowly fading it out, because we don't need prompting forever. Shaping a behavior might be, maybe this particular student can't sit crisscross applesauce, but they can sit on their bottom and they can, even if their feet are straight out, like that's a shaping of behavior. And then, or maybe you can get them to tolerate sitting down for activities slowly but surely. Prompting, that's something that we do in music class. Prompting, like tapping a student's drum to, like, if they're just sitting there, it kind of gives them like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be playing. Or, hey, Johnny, can you put that drum away? That's a prompt. There's also a hierarchy for prompting, which I will get into in just a minute. Again, stimulus fading, which I just talked about creating some kind of visual support or some kind of support in general, and then fading out when it's not necessary. And discrimination, elimination, and exclusion learning. We may have different words for these in music education, but they're the same thing. Learning about something by what it's not. Learning about something given that we know something. Like if I was to give you an idea, like you know what a drum is, but you don't know what a sabar is. So, I might say sabar, and you're like, well, I mean, they're both drums regardless, but if I had a picture of a snare drum and a sabar, I would say sabar. I know what a snare drum is, so it must be this other picture. So that's kind of like learning based on something that it's not. So we do all of these things in music, and these are all things that are done in ABA as well. They just sometimes have different words. So the hierarchy of prompting starts at the bottom, or I guess it depends. You can start from either side. From least restrictive to most restrictive is from top to bottom. So getting a baseline is the first step. you can't really start prompting unless you know where the student is. If you're prompting before you know where the student is, then you're going to be prompting when you don't need to and not prompting when you need to. Verbal prompts are least restrictive or least intrusive. So it could be like a question or a request, like, hey, put your drum away. A gesture cue is the next step down. So it might be like pointing to something or pointing and using a verbal cue. So they might need both. Visual prompt goes after gestural. So it could be like showing a picture. Maybe you show a picture of putting your drum away, or maybe you show a picture of standing up, things like that. Modeling is another one after visualing. So you demonstrate what needs to be done. You could say, do this. You could say, Johnny, put your drum away. Look it, I'm going to put my drum away. Now it's your turn. And then lastly, the most restrictive would be physical guidance or hand over hand prompting. That is literally moving the person's body for them. So honestly, physical prompting should be saved for if there's really no other choice. Physical prompting is very restrictive and not all students can tolerate it. Some students don't like to be touched. It's always important to ask, like, hey, can I touch your hand? Or, hey, can I help? I frequently have to ask students all the time. If they are okay with me touching their hand, they will present it. They'll give it to, like, move their hand closer to me. If I say, hey, can I help? And a student says, I need space, please. Then I back off and I'm saying, okay, that's fine, buddy. You know, let me know when you're ready. And I might check back in 2 to 5 minutes. But also something to think about is that least restrictive to most restrictive prompting might not always work. And I say this because I've had students that if I did not teach most to least, they would learn incorrect information. So basically, if I was teaching and I had 2 pictures and I said, okay, I had a picture of a piano and a picture of a trumpet. And I said, which one is the trumpet? And then they circled the piano picture and I was too late to do anything about it. And I said, nope, actually it's this one. That particular student didn't learn that the picture of the trumpet was trumpet. They ended up learning that piano, like a picture of piano, was for trumpet. And it was really hard to change that. So some students may need most prompting to least prompting. And you can kind of gauge that, which is another reason why communication is so important with teachers as well. So here's an example of something I might do. And I said, so an example was, what kind of instrument did we just hear? We just watched a video. Did we hear the balfon or did we hear the sabar? And I might stand partially in front of the incorrect answer because the correct answer was sabar. And so if I have that same particular student, then I'm able to start that student off in a positive place so that they can access the curriculum and learn what we were talking about. I don't want them to watch a video on sabar and not be able to say what they saw or confuse it with balfon or any other incorrect information that would interfere with the learning. So I would say, yes, yep, sabar, and I would step out of the way so that they could see that, yep, you got it right. Another thing to think about is tiered questioning. So it's appropriate for all levels. It builds confidence and it increases language and communication opportunities. So tiered questioning starts off kind of like prompting would. So you start with least restrictive. So, you know, least restrictive or that should say number 1 piano or number 2 trumpet. So a tier 1 question is basically an either or. There is a concrete answer and it'll ask something either or from something that maybe they saw, they experienced. So we had just watched a video on Ray Charles and my question was, in the video we saw, did Ray Charles play piano or trumpet? So, you know, then they could decide, oh, they played piano. And, you know, you could just give them one extra choice as like a distractor. just to make it just a little bit more challenging instead of, did they play piano? Yes or no? So this particular question is like another step up. A tier 2 question is still a clear answer, but maybe the choices can increase. Maybe the complexity of the choice can increase. Maybe it's an observational question that kind of leads. So it would be, here's an example of more choices. So, and you can even add a choice board to it. So what instruments did you see in the video? Again, the choice board doesn't have to be offered, but it can be. So this can either be an observational question, what'd you see? There was still a concrete answer. I only saw drums and trumpet and a singer. Or you can add in a choice board. What 3 instruments did you see? Or what 2 instruments did you see in this video? Things like that. And a tier 3 question has no concrete answer, and it has open-ended questions. So kind of questions about, what are you thinking? What did you feel? Things like that. Like there's no right answer. What did you notice about the music video? And then the student would respond, maybe they would say, I noticed it was in black and white. Yeah, you're right. That's right. Does this mean that it was an old video or a new video? What could black and white movies mean, or black and white music videos? I noticed that there were 5 musicians. Oh yeah. 5 musicians. And what were those musicians playing? Did you think they were playing like happier music, sadder music? What do you think? So you can kind of take it all kinds of directions. So I've been putting out a whole bunch of stuff, and now I just wanted to show what it could look like as a lesson. So that's why I put it all together. This is the lesson that I gave on blues and funk. So for the blues, I gave a really general overview of, blues is typically sad music, or the feelings of it or the mood of it is sad. So I used a blue sad face. And I said that the first recording that we could hear was from 1910 in Mississippi. So, I put the state of Mississippi and I put 1910. And then the 3 main instruments that you could see in the blues: piano, upright bass, and guitar. And I would give them an option to be like, hey, what instruments do you see on this page? Or, hey, can anybody come up to the board and circle piano for me? So things to get them engaged. I also provided a slide that said, hey, these are the 3 musicians that we can choose from to hear an example of what blues sounded like. I might even go through the pictures and say, what instrument does Muddy Waters play? What instrument does B.B. King play? What instrument does Ma Rainey play? Because Ma Rainey is not visibly holding an instrument. So I might ask questions about the pictures. Students can then come up and click on one of the pictures because I embedded a link into it, and it'll take them to either a live performance or a music video that they made. I like live performances better, just because it makes it seem like we're at a concert as opposed to a music video. And the sound is more authentic. After that, we would practice doing some 12-bar blues because it's super relevant in a lot of the music. So on YouTube, you can find C major backing track. And this is the way that I taught it to my students. This is, this is obviously a modified version of what it could be, because switching after 2 notes was a little bit too quick. So I switched it to every time we would play 4 of each of the colors that was needed. And when we would play along with the YouTube track for, I don't know, maybe like 4 times, just so that they can get it. Because sometimes it takes a couple times to get it right. So I wanted to give them enough of a chance. Sometimes I would slow it down in case students needed it. I would speed it up if students seemed like they needed a challenge. I made these into different rhythms if students needed a challenge. And then we did this, I should be specific, we did this particular 12-bar blues on the xylophone. I didn't have enough pianos, so we did it on xylophone. You could also do it on desk bells. Just desk bells pierce the ears a little bit more than xylophones. I only give metallophones out to students with gentle touches. I do not give metallophones out to students that have very heavy-handed hands. I usually give bass xylophones to students that have heavier playing, and students that have very, very gentle playing. I usually give them, I don't know, maybe like one of the soprano xylophones, or not an alto, because I think I have altos. I don't know, the shorter ones. So it just depends on, I have an instrument type for each playing ability. And again, you don't have to have it this way. You can always modify what you have. You can always make do with what you have. You don't have to modify your instruments to, especially if there's no budget, you can't do that. So then after we were done with blues, we moved on to funk and soul. And the way that I presented funk and soul was that it came from the blues. So it went from blues to funk, and funk was happier, it was faster, and it had more instruments. And that's just the way that I explained funk. So making it very basic, because these are concepts, and concepts are hard. Like it's even hard for adults to identify what specifically is blues and funk and soul and, all of these other ideas. I have students come up and I tell them that students can come up to the board to circle an instrument that they see. You can verbally tell me from your seat. You can tell me on a device. So any of these things, or you can I don't know, they could tell their teacher and their teacher could tell me, however they wanted to do it. Even if students need a little bit of a lead, I might say oh, can anybody come up and circle the piano? I want them to engage to see how many instruments they know. And then I introduce oh, this is the synthesizer. Hey, you found that instrument. That's really cool. That's a new one that's specific to soul and funk or something like that. Just kind of giving a little bit extra. All right. So the page that I have up now is just pictures of different funk and soul musicians that we could watch a live performance. So I have Kool and the Gang, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, James Brown, Earth, Wind and Fire, Prince, and Donna Summer. The most popular ones were Earth, Wind and Fire and Kool and the Gang. And James Brown was really popular for a week and then wasn't. I don't know why anybody else wasn't really popular. Most of the teachers wanted me to pick Donna Summer. It's guys, it's up to the kids. So we ended up doing I Got You, I Feel Good. And I just introduced James Brown as he's considered the godfather of soul music. And I explained what setting the standard for live performances meant, that he, before this, I gave it very basically, even if it was slightly exaggerated, before this, people really wouldn't move around on stage. They would kind of just sing and do a little dancing, but very small. And, James Brown and his bandmates were jumping all over the place, and they were singing and, going all over the stage and really having some awesome dance moves. So from then on, everybody had to match that, so it's just a little bit easier to digest. And then we did the song, I Got You, I Feel Good. So I started with this slide, so good, I got you. And this is how I presented it. So good with the two notes next to it, again with the two notes next to it. Then we had just the words, and then you would play your last one 5 times in a row. So I started with this because it was the hardest one. It had a lot of anticipation. It had a different rhythm to it than just playing 4 notes in a row over and over again. So I wanted to make sure they had it. And once they finally started getting it, then I would add in the slide before it and the slide after it, which is just a basic 12-bar blues. So now I'm going to stop talking. And what I wanted to do is take a reflection. And then after that, if you'd like, I'm going to give a 5-minute bathroom break so that everybody can get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, all the things. And then I'll work on the last half of it. So my first one, reflection, take 20 seconds. Does prompting, tiered questioning, and evidence-based teaching fit into your curriculum? Why or why not? Again, you do not have to type it into the chat. You can just think about it on your own. And 20 seconds starting now. Five seconds. Okay, so that was for my reflection. Hang on, I gotta check. Yes, exactly, because it scaffolds and making steps and expectations clear. Exactly, exactly. So I'm gonna give everyone a 5-minute break. Take a second, go to the bathroom. I see that there are 10 participants. I will at least wait until we have everybody. I can't wait forever. Be mindful, but I'll see you guys back here at 11 o'clock. And I'll just press pause and yeah, so I'll see you guys soon. Okay, so we're back. Part of the general music that I do at the school that I work at during the week is I offer, or I try and make it, because it's a private school, so I try and make it as authentic as we can and in like a middle school, high school aspect for students. So for instance, in a typical middle or high school, students can sign up for electives if they are ready for it. So I partnered with my good friend Leah Gregoire. If you, by any chance, if you were at the Berkeley conference, the ABLE conference, we presented on an occupational therapy collaboration with music education to teach group piano lessons to students with very high support needs. And so this is a little bit of kind of like what we do. So the group piano class, we started it online during the pandemic and then transitioned it to in person, which was really exciting. So at first we had to teach the parents how to support their kids online. And then we had to go and teach the teachers how to help support students, as well as like, what we were going to be doing to help support. So the classes were roughly 30 to 40 minutes. We did a physical warm-up. We started with scales. We did opening and closing songs. And we created a resource booklet that I think I shared it on the very last slide. And we also created adapted notation. So this is the way that I set up my piano. C was red, D was orange, E was yellow, F was green, blue, nope. G was purple, nope, come on. G was blue, A was purple, B was pink. There we go. So each one had a different color. Now, I'm not saying that everybody is super good at this, because sometimes we get colors red and orange confused, or colors that are right next to each other, like blue and purple. Sometimes those can be difficult to discern. This might not always be the case for use with students that are colorblind. We have a visually impaired student that we work with that right now, this particular student is using desk bells. And right now he's only using the red, yellow, and blue desk bells because those are the ones that he can discern the best. So color may not always work, but this is what we use for it, unless a student needs otherwise. So the way that we wanted to adapt the notation is that we would start out with just the circles, as you could see, like we did in like So Good, I Got You, and the 12-bar blues. Then eventually we would put that on a staff where they would go. Then we would add stems, up or down, depending. Then those stems would go to black stems, like you would typically see in music notation. And then the heads would start becoming black to match typical music notation. So right now, oops, other way, Miss Nadia. Here we go. Right now, my students are at this point. We did start here. All of the new students that join, I allow students to join at whatever time they get interested. I don't really have like, we're going to join at this point in this semester, and then we're going to stop here. It's just whenever they feel like joining. So I have a class full of different adaptions of things that I need to do. So if you can get, I don't know everybody's maintenance facility at their schools. However, the maintenance guys that work at our school love our kids very much, and they make specific support furniture for them. So if you don't know what a slant board is, it is basically like a cookbook stand or like a book stand where it supports a book being open, or to put something flat up against a slant board, because maybe students don't learn very well by looking down when it's flat, but maybe if it's up at an angle, they can see it better. And he made me a giant one for a piano. So I have, I forgot to share the picture, but it's really cool. So I have a piano on a slant board for a student that was having trouble because the visual field that he was looking from his eyes to the keyboard when it was down by, a typical height for a piano was too far. So we had to bring it up and closer to his face, and not in a way that the light could shine on it too much so that it was causing some confusion on the notes. So we brought it up at an angle, and I mean, the stand is huge, but the student has learned. We started this student by using note cards that had one color dot for every note card, and went through songs just like that with no duration. Then we adapted to putting the same color on the note cards, but just more of the same color. So like 4 pink notes. And what we found was that that particular student was playing all 4 pink notes, but instead of playing pink, 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 they were playing like pink, red, orange, yellow. So like that wasn't quite what we needed. So we flipped it so that the music was vertical. So it was coming down like you would see it in Rock Band or something like that, or Guitar Hero, excuse me. And he started getting really good at it. So then we added notation of different colors. So instead of having 4 pinks, now we have red, blue, yellow, green, but we have it vertical. So he's starting from the bottom to the top, touching the note on the page or the colored dot, and then playing the correct note. When he started getting really good at that, we flipped the note cards horizontally and tested if he could perform it and hit the right notes, and he could. So then we made it just a little bit bigger, and then we put 2 lines on it. So, I mean, he's come such a long way in a year, but this is just another example of being able to do some stimulus fading. Like, first we had to baseline it with just one color at a time. Then we did more colors. Then we put it vertically. Then after vertical, it went back to horizontal. This is all stimulus shaping and fading and trying to fade out prompts when it's not needed. So he's pretty much almost at the same point that the other players are at as well. This is also a particular student that has a hard time with finger dexterity, as many individuals do with autism. Sometimes the muscle tone isn't there. Sometimes there's palsy in hands that may not be specific to autism in general. However, sometimes we just really need to try and work through it. And this particular student has been using his thumb, pointer, and middle finger independently. It's taken a decent amount of time, but with the correct support, he's been getting it. So it's been a really cool journey for him. Let me scooch forward. So this is our typical schedule. We start with a greeting song. We do a warm-up that was prescribed by the OT. We do some scales. Usually I have students do pointer finger. And when we're ready, when we're demonstrating some more skills, then I have us start using thumb, pointer, and middle finger. And then the last 2, ring and pinky, are added in later because those are the weakest hands. After scales, we start working on patterns, techniques, and exercises. And I'll show you what those look like shortly. Then we'll work on some core songs and then sing goodbye. So this is what our warm-up will look like. Everybody does it. You can start, we did a variety of these exercises, not every single one, every single class. So sometimes we would massage the fingers to wake them up from base to tip, reach hands above head to straighten elbows and clap 2 times. Something called popcorn hands, where you tell them to squeeze their hands as tightly as they possibly can. And then on a count of 3, pop them open like popcorn. Then touching pointer finger and thumb together. And if that goes well, then doing it with middle finger and thumb, and so on. Rub hands together like you're washing them, and don't forget to rub the backs of your hands like you're washing them. Thumbs up is another good one that students continuously practice. A number 1 finger, a peace sign. These are all isolated finger pointing that can be really difficult and is worth practicing. Holding your hand out and having your pointer and middle finger walk across the table or your hand or piano keys is also a great way to help with finger isolation. Shaking out your hands side to side and up and down are good ways to wake it up. If you've ever seen Bring It On, I have a Bring It On reference about wiggling fingers. Sometimes it's good to just wiggle the fingers without wiggling the hands. However, I do provide accommodations saying that if wiggling your fingers looks like shaking your hands, that's okay. But think spirit fingers. And 5 hard claps so that we can get the tingly sensation for proprioception, so that we know where hands are in space and time and to get feeling to them. Just some of the rationales for the warm-ups, why they're needed for the students that I have. A lot of the students have motor movement impairments, like cerebral palsy, low muscle tone, sometimes just finger and wrist dexterity. They might have gross motor, but not fine motor. They might not be able to really use the full extent of their radial manipulations. They might have delays, all kinds of things that require a little bit more of a clinical side in order for them to be able to access the material that I'm providing. By doing this, it stimulates both their brain and their body so that it's starting to work together. And it also starts to have us attend visually to the instruction, as well as the stimuli that's in front of them and the skills that are being presented. So this is kind of what it looks like for scales. This is like the very basic, like first class. So we were kind of showing them where the key was, as well as what to play and how many times. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue. It goes higher, but I didn't want to add everything. I had the next set that was showing what fingers to push. Now, this isn't going to be for every single student. This is out of the materials that I provided to parents to kind of show them what we were talking about so that they didn't feel like they didn't understand when the class finally came around. So we were kind of showing them like, this is what we'd like you to try. This is what finger to use, all the things. This is what our sheet music looks like now. So this is what we do for a quarter note scale. This is what we would use for a half note scale. This is what we would use for a whole note scale and for an eighth note scale. I'm not the first one to use this kind of system. There are plenty of other things that are curriculums that use similar systems. I just decided on this and created this for my particular classes. And I decided to use the colors along with the letters and the different spatial duration notices. I also don't really call it half note and whole note. I call it like maybe 2 seconds and 4 seconds. And we kind of, when we go through it, let me see if I can bring up a rhythm practice. So the way that I would read this for students would be like C, 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 hold it down. C. So like the hold it down part fills in the back half that needs to be held down. If it's a whole note, it would be like hold it down really long. Just it ended up working out than just counting from 1 to 4. Students were hitting it too many times. So I came up with my own better way to help them understand duration. Even though I elongated the notes on the page, we still weren't connecting that meant that note was longer. So I just used word prompts. So this is what it would look like. I did it in every color. I had different rhythm practices. And this is what it would look like in a song. So this is a song that I adapted from Piano Adventures. Piano Adventures is it's like a series of books. I think the very first book is a purple book and it has a piano with wings on it. That's what I use for teaching piano. I find it really helpful. They have a version for adults that are learning piano and for kids that are learning piano, and kids that are like pre-notation that are starting to play piano as well. So they have a lot of options. I love their whole series. This is kind of what I've been introducing to my students now. This is how I've done it. Again, this isn't specific to me. There are plenty of other places that have, or materials that have done this or something similar. I definitely wasn't the first one. This is just what I did for my students. This is what you could do. This is not what you have to do. But just a simple hot cross buns. But this is where we are now. Some considerations for visually impaired students were decibels, switches that you could get. Oh man, I forget where the switches come from. Maybe Apple. I don't know. I don't think maybe Apple. I don't know. You can Google them, but they look like that. Some of them do anyway. You can also have, if you have seen on like Instagram, those people that train their dogs or their cats or whomever to press the buttons for speech. You could use those buttons and just program piano notes in them. That's what we're kind of doing for the visually impaired student next, after using decibels, because decibels aren't perfect and they don't have the exact same colors as we use. So hopefully getting those types of buttons will be helpful for my visually impaired student. It's important to make sure that the goals are accessible and appropriate and can also be inclusive for the student, whatever they need. Also, if you have things that light up, like pianos that light up or buttons that light up, do be wary of students that have seizure disorders, that it might be harmful. And you could also consider OT equipment and even doing warm-ups. So these are just some of the things that in the past I've done for chorus. Like these are just some visuals we needed for warming up our breath, our body, and our voice. So we kind of did sniff the flower, blow out the candle. It might not be realistic for everybody, but I also have tried like blow the feather off your hand, which is great, but it can disrupt class quite a bit because it's so fun or exciting. So maybe pretending to blow out the candle is also better and less disruptive. Catch a bubble, hold your breath, and then breathe it out, hiss like a snake. You could try that, or just breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. So we'll do it for 5 seconds, then 7 seconds, then 10 seconds. Vocal warm-ups. I always wanted to make sure I had equal representation of all of my students. So I make sure that the visuals that I have incorporate as many genders and races and whoever I have in my class, ages, depending. So this is a voice warm-up and kind of following the voice with your finger, with your following the line with your voice. There we go. I even provided up in the corner kind of like a verbal prompt. Say ah for this one. Say wow for the, like wow, wow, wow. And then I kind of gave like a silly one, see if they could do it. And then I would use hand signs. I found that using hand signs kind of created a concrete mental anchor for the sounds that needed to happen. So it was pretty cool. So I started using hand signs for everything while teaching, just chorus. So going up, going down. And then we had a song, Sweetly the Swan. I did have a nonverbal student in chorus. And part of what he did in chorus was he did do hand signs. However, he also helped us by playing ukulele as an accompaniment. So it depended, whatever he wanted to do. I let him decide. So for Sweetly the Swan, he played ukulele. And this is the song. Sweetly the swan sings, do-de-a-do, do-de-a-do, do-de-a-do. So I did it with the hand signs and a line to show how your voice is going to move while we're singing that, so that we can understand that even though la is before and after sol, they both sound the same. I tried to make it almost like a grid where like if la was repeated, no matter how far apart, they'd be on the same spot. So that's where your voice needs to go. So again, considerations for nonverbal students for participation would be like an AAC device. I did program his AAC device to sing certain parts that he would have to press in the moment. A lot of it was warm-ups, and then I couldn't get it just right. And I wanted him to have more meaningful participation. I also made sure that, you know, he was an adult male student, so not having like that robotic female voice that comes out of it, like that wasn't quite appropriate. You know, I needed either an adult man voice or I needed a teenage voice, and not a child's voice or a female voice. So it's really important to have that kind of representation. And if you're selecting a singer to be the voice, and like if you're not using your own, then make sure to select somebody that either is close to their age, if possible, or not, at least in their same vocal range. I don't want to, yeah. So, oops. Oh man. So I just wanted to really quickly, before this even goes, I've also done an elective that they do at Berkeley right now. And they also do a music tech class as well, but I wanted to kind of explain about iPad Ensemble and kind of introduce a few apps that you could use, even not having an iPad Ensemble, just something that you could use in general music. I've used GarageBand for things like introducing instruments that are from different countries. Like they have a really good world music section. So like they could introduce koto drums and different Chinese instruments. So sometimes it's like, you know, we can't have every instrument available for everybody. So it's a good way to, hey, this is kind of how it sounds. And you can kind of play with it a little bit, or you can have one iPad and kind of pass it around if you feel comfortable. So this is an example. I'm going to show a video. I apologize. I set the setting to optimize for video. However, you never know how this is going to go. But this is the very first pilot that we did at Berkeley for iPad Ensemble for what it could look like. So I just wanted to show you that. There's one more video after this, which is similar. It's just with a different group of students. And then I'm going to talk about a few apps. I'm going to pause it only because the student got a little bit frustrated because we needed her to have a slightly louder sound. So we put it through Bluetooth and it was delayed. So I'm going to stop it right there because she made a really good performance of the first phrase. But this was a special circumstance. Like we had one teacher for every student. I was the one shooting the video. Miles, the person that I keep talking about all the time, was the one that was pointing to the board. And then we had two other teachers that were working with two other students as well that either were former teachers or are current teachers now. Maybe, I don't know, you've seen other videos with them. Maybe you've seen them before. But anyway, so this was our very first iPad Ensemble. And then next one. There we go. So this is the next iPad Ensemble that we had. There were only 2 members in this one, so it was just me and 2 students. The student to the left on the screen is playing with 2 iPads. She's extremely advanced. And the student to the left is playing on 1 iPad. However, he had a little bit of trouble keeping the beat. So we found an app that I'll talk about in a minute that he just had to hold his finger down, because we experimented with quite a few apps, how to keep the beat, all kinds of things. And we found that this particular thing that he was doing was most appropriate for him. And he's also our iPad ensemble singer. So this is, I like to move it, move it. And here it goes.
Hi, my name is Shania, and this is Jagger. Say hi.
Hi.
And this one's Nadia.
Hello.
And today we're gonna play Alice Will Move It from Madagascar. Hope you like it.
Ready?
I like to.
Yep. Wait, one more time. All right. It's a very repetitive song, so I was just going to stop it right there. Both of these students particularly enjoyed Madagascar and absolutely adored this song, so we put it into production. Shania can work well with any person. She's the best. Jagger is the same way, can work well with just about anybody, and he's also super flexible. But we found things for him to do. We worked with his abilities. We worked with Shania's abilities, and they're honestly a really good team. I got lucky with them. They're not in iPad Ensemble right now as they're in other ensembles, but they're still really proud of this video and what they presented. So now, nope. There we go. So now I want to just check out really quickly, kind of like how the way I set up the music for iPad Ensemble. And this is in GarageBand. We use GarageBand the most, mainly because it was free. And there was a lot of stuff to do in GarageBand, and it usually comes on iPhones and iPads already. So there wasn't really like a huge download process or anything. But this is the beginning of Beat It. Dun, 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 dun. And I probably didn't sing that very well. However, that was the first part, the intro. And then the next kind of prompt would be like, all right, this is the drum set part while the guitar gets ready. And then we have the guitar riff, which I do believe Shania did. And then we had another student that was playing the drum beats, another student that was singing, another student that was playing the bass. So it's all different. We even had the same things when there was the bass riff going on, and they just kind of had to keep the same rhythm and just change chords as the song progressed. So we put that on there so that they were able to do that. And obviously we went over this. I say we, and it really was me and another teacher. I created all of these different resources because there's not resources really like this. And I had to make this while we were online. And because we did iPad Ensemble online, and I had to teach the parents how to use GarageBand and how to help their students use the iPads. It was interesting. And I had the most flexible, awesome parents to work with, thankfully. But I'll kind of show you as we go, because I put some of those resources in here. So GarageBand's the first thing. That's my cat as the background. This is what my iPad looks like right now. So I'll show you GarageBand first. And this was a packet that I had sent to parents, how to edit a chord on GarageBand, and it didn't really matter. You know, it's like, you know, this is the section you're going to come up to. This is what the app looks like. Pick any one of these and start editing. I was like, you know, for all intents and purposes, we used the orchestra one, just, I don't know, because I did. And then I went step by step on how to edit a chord. I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker. I believe this is linked at the back of my slide. Anyway, if you'd like to see it, I can always send it to you or send it to Dr. Bernard and she'll send it to you. So just let me know. So, you know, how to change from major to minor, how to have an abbreviation, how to have a sharp or a flat, how to delete a chord that you don't need, how to make a 7. See, and then it deletes. How to click the done button when you're all done so that you can play. We also did how to save a project on Guitar or GarageBand so that we didn't have to recreate the pages every time we had the class, because that was time consuming. And, you know, we were spending like 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of each class being like, all right, you need a G, and then you need a C, and then you need a B flat, you know, so we taught them how to save it so that they could just open it up and click on their saved piece and it would just open right up. And here are the directions on how to save. This was more for parents than it was for students, because the students that we had were a little bit younger. So now I'll go on to figure. This is the one that I was playing in the Move It video. And it's either like pitches, drums. That's what Jagger was playing with his 2 fingers pushing down on it. You can decide what you want on it. So he had one that was pressed and it was just keeping a bass beat, like doom, 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 doom. And then I think the other one was on the hi-hat going like, so you can kind of, I think this is what his screen actually looked like. I think, no, there was one more. Kick was on there. Anyway, there's also the yellow is for pitches so that you could like make a melody. And the red is just like bass notes. Figure you could use, I mean, this is not something that I use in my typical class figure. Drum beats plus I use quite frequently, especially if we're practicing rhythms. It's just a whole app, just all kinds of rhythms. And you can choose, there's a paid version and a free version. I use the paid version, but I mean, you don't have to. There's plenty of loops that are on there for free. But I love it and my students love it and they like to like hear what the different sounds sound like. And it helps to give like, if you need to teach and play at the same time, sometimes having the drum beats behind you can be helpful so that you can talk over what you're doing. Sing True is something that I used to use in chorus or even private vocal lessons. And it kind of shows you your score on matching the pitch that you hear. It kind of does a little bit of ear training with you as well. There's another app that I'm not sure is on here, but it'll tell you if you're singing loud enough or if you're, now try and sing it and it'll show you the volume and how loud you are. It'll give you a percentage on your score. It really tracks a lot. So, go. Sing to Say is an app that I helped develop with a somebody named Neil Smolar. He has worked with Nickelodeon and Discovery Kids and wanted to create almost like a speech device that would sing the notes or sing the words instead of just speaking them, and using the benefit of music and how we learn music to help facilitate language. So it's a musical approach. There's also a lot of data that gets scored, like how often students are using different words. It shows like frequency, it shows accuracy, it shows all kinds of stuff. There's a whole information section for parents. It's a really incredible app. I highly recommend it, not just because I made it or helped make it, just because it's a really awesome app. Loopable is something that you could do to start working with form or improv or creating compositions. And it just involves dragging all of these little square shapes into the empty squares above. And depending on the shape, the animal in the picture will do different dances. So the kids think it's funny. And it's a great way to kind of start them off with composing or creating patterns. There's Staff Wars and there's Staff Wars Live. I've used this in private lessons. Staff Wars is almost more like a video game where it's just kind of like, reading notes on the staff and you have to click the appropriate letter. It comes in many different clefs. It comes in chromatic, diatonic. I think there's other specifications that you could look at. And you kind of use it almost like a video game. But Staff Wars Live actually uses the microphone on your phone to listen to what you're playing. And instead of typing poking the pitch on the screen, you're playing it on that actual instrument. So like if you set it up with your piano and it shows you a middle C going across the page, then you hit middle C and it'll explode the note and it'll start getting faster and faster the more that you get correct. And this is kind of what it looks like. And in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little red note and it travels across the screen from right to left. And you want to get the note and click on the note or play the note before it gets to the other side. The next one, I'm not sure. This one is still available, but I'm not sure if they're making updates anymore. OM Guitar, but it kind of looks like OMG Guitar, is a really great app. It gives you a guitar that you could play acoustically or electric. This can be used in class if they also have a ukulele app too, which I think is somewhere in here. So if students have a lot of dexterity issues and it's not feasible for them to hold and play a ukulele, and if you have a spare iPad, you can have them strum on the iPad for guitar. Maybe they have pointing skills. And they also have pre-recorded skills or pre-recorded songs on here that you just have to follow the chords and you'll play the song. ODD or Oddball. This is a really different, it was piloted maybe a year ago, and it is a bouncy ball that is also a drum machine, and it hooks up to your phone. I've had some students try it. It's a bit more complex to use. But you can tap on it. It's touch sensitive. I've thought about using it for touch sensitivity in general music to try and help with touch sensitivity. It's great for if you want to try keeping the beat. You can make songs on your phone using the sounds that come out of the ball drum machine. So it's really cool. I think it's only $80. It comes from London. But it's a really cool novel item to have. I like it more than the Skoog. Rockmate, I don't believe is being made anymore. However, I really liked it because it allowed 4 people to be around one iPad and play at the same time. So it had 2 guitars, a drum set, and 1 octave of a piano. And for each guitar, it had pedals. It also had a feature to record, and you could even, I think, plug in for a microphone as well. So you could change the style of what things sounded like, but it was a way to get students all around one iPad playing at the same time, which I thought was really cool. They might have it under a different name now, but I've typed in Rockmate to the Apple store and I haven't found it in a while. Sad face. Thumb Jam is another one that I'm not sure if they're making updates anymore, but this is a great a tool to have maybe in the general music classroom, maybe if it's just in an iPad ensemble specifically. So it has a very wide range of instruments that are available. You can put all of these vertical lines that are different colors are different notes. So you literally just push the note on the iPad, or you can drag your finger across it and it will create the sounds that like you would hear it if you were actually playing the instrument. Chord Polypad makes it a little bit easier to play chords. Like if students don't have the finger dexterity at all or yet for like maybe holding down 3 notes at a time. This allows students to have little squares that they can pre-record, or like at the bottom of the screen is a little piano and you can click on the notes that you want in your chord. And when you're done, all you have to do is click on the blank square that's above the piano and it'll play the chord for you. So it's a way to play chords without physically playing each note at the same time with different fingers, you know. Makes chord playing a little bit more accessible. AnyTune is another one that's one of my favorites during general music. It's what has allowed me to slow down songs if we're playing to a song. It also allows you to change the key. However, it only works on songs that you purchase, not songs that you get off like Apple Music streaming. So it has to be a song that you purchase. And then you can make changes like the tempo, the key, the speed, all the things. I think you can even make MIDIs, something like that. Oops, other way. LumiKeys is something that's pretty new. It is, I'll show you really quick, really cool, first of all, but it is a small piano that looks like a mixer that you can use as a mixer as well. And it comes with an app called Lumi, and it rains the notes down like you would see on Guitar Hero and lights up the keys as well. It also kind of is, well, pretty much it's like a learn piano app as well, but they offer songs and different ways of playing songs, like playing it for practice, playing it for performance, having the notes rain down and wait until you push the correct note on the piano. It's got a lot of features. Synesthesia is another one that is similar, and it doesn't have as many colors, but they both take data on latency when the note is presented to when the student touches it. It presents accuracy, it gives reinforcement, and it also gives information, both Lumi and Synesthesia, of accuracy of left hand versus right hand, how much you're practicing left hand versus right hand versus all together. So it has a lot of great data that comes with it. And I know I'm saying it has a lot of great data and that doesn't seem exciting, but when you're trying to work with a student that like, I just can't get what's going on, or I just need something else to help me figure out what's going on, then, you know, this is the part where it starts to be like, all right, well, maybe this is how I need to figure it out. Maybe the data can provide some insight. But Lumi is pretty new. I think each of the keyboards are around $200. There are a ton of music tech grants currently, especially Promethean board grants. I highly recommend either writing a grant or having your principal help write a grant if possible. These devices are incredible, but there's a lot of music technology grants right now. I found like at least 200. So I work with somebody to help write grants. I don't write them myself. But if you write them yourself, I would highly recommend it. So other considerations, like I talked about before, using a switch and doing some warm-ups. Oops. Oh my goodness. Using a switch. If you can't have things more accessible, be careful of using things that light up due to seizure disorders. Switches can be used through GarageBand to play multiple different kinds of instruments. There are different sizes and different kinds of switches. This is the one that I have on this page is just one kind. They have individual buttons. They have ones with more buttons. They have ones that look like dashboards. Like there's all kinds. There's a really big pull in adaptive music technology right now for students to access music through devices. Same thing with like video games too. There's switches work for video games as well. But anyway, so ending, this is my last slide other than the contact me. I know we're ending slightly early, but I can totally entertain some questions before I let you guys go for the day. All in all, participation, not perfection. We're not looking for perfection. Maybe, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress. There's nothing perfect. Like music is never perfect. There's always room for improvement. Differentiate expectations. Don't underestimate your students. Try and really dig into what are my students attending to. Looking at the individual needs of the students and the class need as a whole. It's really tough, but really helpful and satisfying when you finally get each of those successfully. Supports that you can use in the classroom and for each lesson. Sometimes that's support furniture, sometimes that's visual supports, sometimes it's verbal support, physical support, whatever is needed. They have a lot of adaptive instrument equipment that isn't related to technology as well. It's important to think about age appropriateness, as well as making sure that we're not sacrificing foundation in trying to appease other people. Just like I said earlier, we can't do division and algebra if we can't count. We can't do dubstep and Rachmaninoff and all these other amazing chord changes before we just have the very basic steps, the very foundation in music. Communication is absolutely essential. Build a network with people. It can really seem like being the music teacher is like being on an island alone. Nobody ever understands what you do. And even if they do, it's few and far between. It's never enough. And sometimes you're in the basement. Sometimes you're in the auditorium. Sometimes your room is just on a cart going to every classroom. So it can be really lonely. And it can be really discouraging sometimes, especially when you have teachers that are like, hey, can you do a frog song with my kids? Because we're learning about frogs. Actually, I created a curriculum that I'd like to, put in place. So, not everybody understands. And sometimes that might require some kind of teaching on our end so that people kind of understand this is what music education is. This is what is required. This is what is expected. And this is a serious special. This is a serious subject. This isn't something that's a throwaway. We don't just bang instruments and play music. We actually do things. We actually have a clinical side. We actually have a research-based, evidence-based teaching presentation that can reach kids on different levels that really can't be reached in other areas. Constantly, I'm sure you guys have this too, that teachers are like, wow, I've never seen this student do this before. never seen this before. You know, we've been trying to get this student to do this for weeks, and all of a sudden they do it like instantly in music class. And I mean, I'm sure we've all had that. And it's true. Some people don't believe it, but it's absolutely true. And just lastly, keeping a growth mindset. I know sometimes things can be discouraging and disappointing, but always having positivity and a growth mindset can be so helpful for students and so much easier said than done. However, I'm seeing a hand is raised. Let me see how I can address this. Yes, Fabiana, do you want to write in the chat? Okay, well, while Fabiana is writing in the chat, also, I don't know if you guys have been allowed to talk in other presentations. It's okay if you have and have not, just let me know. I was just asking for the chat so I can just finish really quickly. The last thing I have is just contact me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. And I also have a very large list of resources, including Wellburn Gourd Farm, if you'd like to look at it, the Berkeley Institute for Arts Education, and a lot of other things that I've talked about. So I am open to questions. If you guys have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A section. I know that you guys weren't going to be able to show your screen. I wasn't sure if you were able to talk in the past. We haven't been able to talk, but we can if you'd like. Just wait another minute or two, just in case anybody is still typing. I have something from Jessica. Thank you for your informative presentation. I look forward to trying out some of those apps for iPads. I highly recommend it. They're super fun. And obviously the kids are going to love it. I have done it with everybody has their own iPad, and also with everybody, we just have one iPad and pass it around. So you can, however you want to implement it, they're going to love it. I have another one from Moniz. The Lumi looks really interesting. Have you seen the keyboard in person? Is black and color lights up, or color all the time? So Moniz, I actually bought some of these and They have different light settings. You can turn down the brightness. You could turn off the lights if that is something you don't like. I'm pretty sure you can. You can also change some of the colors. They have it where it's like all one color, or you can change it from rainbow color to like, I don't know, like only the C's are red and everything else is white. When you're playing the pieces that they have pre-recorded in there, it only lights up one singular key at a time unless you turn off the lights. You can also hook a bunch of them up together so that it makes a really big Lumi key, and it emulates different range on the piano. It's really intuitive. I do have to say though that they take forever to come in though. I was waiting like 4 or 5 months to get mine. I like the colors too. I think that for the majority, I feel like it really works well. The only thing that I was hoping that it would do is change individual colors, because you can't change individual colors. You can only change the keyboard color variations. So like I wanted to change, there's 2 blues on there, like dark blue, light blue. And I wanted to kind of like shift it over, but you can't do individual colors. But all in all, it's a really, really, really awesome app. It's also a mixer too. It also, I don't know if anyone knows what Roly blocks are, those little squares that have the squares that like DJs use them. The Lumi keys are partnered with Roly. I think they're from the same company, and you can use both of those devices simultaneously as well, just in case you have really a desire to be a DJ in your classroom. Give us another couple of minutes. And it looks like I'll end us at noontime. I don't have anything else for the extra half an hour. If anybody needs to head out, because I'm just going to give another 3 minutes just in case people are typing. But if you are all set, you can send me a little thumbs up emoji, and you can head out. Thank you, Moniz. I appreciate that. Yes. Thanks, Julie. Thank you, Fabiana. It's nice to meet everybody. Kind of. I know we didn't really like meet, but it was nice to join you guys on this Saturday morning. All right, it is noontime, so I'm gonna let everybody head out. And thank you very much. Bye, everyone. I'm just going to wait for everybody to exit just in case.